and switch my camera on. Welcome to the webinar Scirocco tool to assess the maturity requirements of the original good practices. This webinar has been organized by Work Package 4 and Work Package 3 in the framework of the analysis of the OTPs in the pre-implementation phase of JADECARE. During the next hour, I will introduce you the use of the Scirocco tool to assess the maturity requirements of the JADECARE OTPs. This webinar is mainly aimed at early adopters. As you know, this is original good practice themes, but we have also invited next adopters to learn about the process and get an idea of the information they will get from this exercise. Please mute yourself when you are not speaking and turn your cameras off. I will also turn off mine now. I will share my screen. Just a second. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So let's start with. I will start the webinar introducing the aim of the assessment of the maturity requirements of the OTPs, then the Scirocco tool, the assessment methodology, and the way to identify the maturity requirements needed for each of the core features of your OTPs. I will also present detailed instructions on the use of the Scirocco tool to get familiar with it, and I will finalize with the timeline for the assessment and next steps. At the end, we will have time for questions and doubts. So as I said, I will start with the assessment of maturity requirements of the JADECARE OTPs. The aim is to assess the maturity requirements of the 4 JADECARE original good practices in order to next adopters analyze their feasibility to implement original good practices core features in their local settings. Understanding maturity requirements as the minimum that the OTPs needs from their environment for it to be possible to carry out. Does this mean if we ask the questions, would the good practice be possible if this requirement were absent from the environment, and we get the answer no, then it is required by the OTP. It is a maturity requirement. This work is planned during the scope definition of the pre-implementation phase.
Excuse me, it is not possible to follow you. There is a terrible noise. Can you resolve this problem, please?
It's for all of you or just for you? The others can hear me fine or not?
I can hear you fine. There's no problem.
I hear you fine.
Yes, here fine.
Yes, fine.
Okay, so don't worry because we are recording it and it will be shared with all of you. Okay? Sorry for that. Try to solve it, and if not, as I said, no worries. Okay, so as I was saying, this work is planned for the scope definition in the pre-implementation phase by month 3. This is December 2020. And why do we need to assess the maturity requirements of the original good practices? Because it will be one of the inputs from the early adopters that the next adopters will study on the step 2 of the scope definition. And that then we'll use in the step 4 to assess the feasibility of implementing the core features that are relevant for them. In short, each original good practice or early adopter will assess the maturity requirements of their OTPs through a consensus process by using the Scirocco Online self-assessment tool, then identify which of these maturity requirements are required in each of the core features, and share the analysis with next adopters to analyze the feasibility of implementing those core features in their local settings. Okay, I will go now into the tool that will be used for assessing the maturity requirements of the OTPs, the Scirocco tool. Okay, this is an online self-assessment tool to address the challenge of adoption and scaling up of integrated care that builds on the conceptual maturity model developed by the B3 action groups of the EIP on AHA. The model has been further validated and tested in over 65 regions or organizations through the Scirocco and Scirocco Exchange project. The tool that we will use is the one we developed in the Scirocco project. With some updates. We, Cronigune, as part of the Scirocco and Scirocco Exchange consortium, are currently working on a new improved tool in Scirocco Exchange that we will share with all of you when it is ready. But for now, let's use the one tested and that we know works well from the Scirocco project. It eases the adoption of integrated care by defining the maturity readiness to adopt integrated care, assessing the maturity of healthcare systems, assessing the maturity requirements of good practices, and supporting twinning and coding to transfer good practices. Consists of an online maturity assessment questionnaire that includes 12 dimensions, each of which addresses a part of the overall effort for integrated care, and includes an explanatory narrative and an assessment scale rated from 0 to 5. It also includes and gives us an output and a spider diagram illustrating the assessment outcomes, and has functionalities for sharing and comparing spider diagrams of different users as a basis for consensus building. It is available in 9 languages, but for this exercise, we will use the one in English. I will explain it later. It also provides a set of methodologies, illustrative videos, and materials on how to use the tool. And the 12 dimensions are readiness to change, structure and governance, digital infrastructure, funding, process coordination, removal of inhibitors, population approach, citizen empowerment, evaluation methods, breadth of ambition, innovation management, and capacity building. Here you have the link to the tool. We will go later on it to make an example, a test, let's say. And each of the dimensions, as I said, has a narrative with detailed information of its objectives and an assessment scale. This is the example of the digital infrastructure dimension. And has 2 main applications. The first one, to assess the maturity of a healthcare system. And once we enter the scores and the justifications, the features justifying those scores, we can identify weaknesses and strengths to advance on the deployment of integrated care. And the second one, to assess the maturity requirements of good practices, meaning that it is the maturity required in each of the dimensions, not necessarily the maturity existing in the context where the practice has been implemented. For example, you can have in your system the stratification approach fully implemented for the world population in population approach dimension, but you may only need in your practice to have the risk stratification approach implemented for specific groups as multimorbid patients. So you should score the dimension according to this degree of development required by your practice. Here you have some examples on the maturity requirements included in a previous exercise. And now going to the methodology for the assessment of maturity requirements. It is a consensus exercise to get a common answer that assesses the minimum requirement so as that the good practice can be successful, and it is not intended to be an academic exercise. It has 3 main steps: to select a multidisciplinary team that will carry out the assessment. Each of the team members to perform an individual assessment, scoring all the dimensions and entering material requirements for each of them. And the third one, consensus exercise to combine individual answers into common agreed responses. We will go now into each of those 3 steps. The first one, to select the multidisciplinary team. Well, the process is carried out by a team of 4 to 5 members. This number has been adapted to the needs of JADECARE. Originally, there were from 6, 8, 10. And includes professionals who know in detail about the original good practice and who understands how the OGP is supported by the health system. One of the group members will be chosen as the coordinator of the assessment and will be in touch with Cronigune to solve doubts and problems and coordinate the whole assessment. All of the members will need to register in the tool through this link, and I will explain later on step by step how to do this, which information do we need to include, and so on. The second step is to perform individual assessment. So each of the team members perform their individual assessment using the Scirocco tool and including scores and maturity requirements for each of the dimensions. Then all of them will share with the coordinator of the assessment on the tool their results. Imagine that the coordinator is the nurse, so all of them will perform their individual assessments and all of them will share them with, in this case, the coordinator that is the nurse. Then they will perform a consensus exercise to agree on scores and maturity requirements for each of the 12 dimensions. It will be done, as we are on COVID times, through an online meeting. And the coordinator of the assessment will combine the individual assessment and enter consensus scores and maturity requirements in the Scirocco tool. Then I will go into that, but those results will be shared with Cronigune to have an overall vision and to report on it. This is an example from Scirocco of a good practice that was assessed in the Basque Country. You see, most of the scores are between 1, 2, even 3. And it's quite different to the assessment we performed in the Basque Country, that most of them were scored with 3s and 4s. So this is what they needed for their practice. I will give you 2 examples. For example, in the digital infrastructure, they need to have implemented a fully integrated electronic health record and accessible to all the professionals. They need telecommunications between primary care and the hospital. In this case, node between them and the social sector. That could be the next step, for example. And they also need the use of the personal health folder accessible for the entire population. That is because it was rated with a 3. And for example, in population approach, with our context, in this case, the Basque Country was scored with a 4, if I remember well. In this case, they only needed screenings and appointment prioritization according to the patient mobility risk, not a full approach on risk stratification as we have. Okay, and once we have made the assessment, what do we have to do? We have to identify and link those outcomes, I mean the maturity requirements, with the core features of the original good practices, identifying for each one what it requires from the environment. To this mean, we will provide you with a template like this, where you will need to include the maturity requirements for each dimension in this column, and identify which of them are required by each of the feature. We have used our the best practice for this example, and we have made, this is not real, we have done it here. I mean, it's just an example to select or check which of them are needed in each feature. And of course, we will assist you during the whole exercise. But before moving on, do you have any questions? I would like to open the floor and make a short break. If you have, please unmute yourself and go on. No questions? Oh, perfect. So everything is clear. Thank you. So let's move on. Getting familiar with the Scirocco tool. Let's get into practice. We have prepared detailed instructions for the use of the tool to be used as a guide during the assessment. It includes the registration in the tool web page, how to perform individual assessments, how to share them with the coordinator, and also instructions for the coordinator to enter the consensus agreed results into the tool and share them with Chronic-UNE, as I said before. So the first thing you will have to do is enter to this link, and you will access to the login and register option and click the register button. There you will need to enter your data, your name, last name, institution, health system. It is important to insert the correct health system, meaning that the same for all the members of the team that will assess each of the original good practices. For example, in our case, will be Basque Country, or package 6 could be Catalonia, 7 Germany, or 8 region South Denmark. And also the country. You can include information about the sector in which you work and your role, even your position, if you want. Not all of them are mandatory. You will see when you complete the questionnaire. Also the phone number if you want, and this is mandatory, the email and the password. And important to select the language English to have all of us the same, the result in the same language. Then once you have logged in, you see this main page. In the home button, you will see a lot of information about the model and the two main types of assessment, the healthcare system and the good practice one. And you can access to links and a lot of instructions. And the one that we are interested in for now is the good practice assessment option. You, of course, can check all of them. This one, the twin and coached one, was developed for Scirocco 1. When we assessed good practices and healthcare system, we try to match them and start with twin and coaching activities. Okay, once we get into the good practice assessment, we will need to perform the individual good practice, our individual good practice assessment. This is the main page for entering results. First of all, you will need to enter a name for your assessment. In this case, I've written OTP test A as an example. Then score each of the 12 dimensions and insert the maturity requirements for each of them. You can go from D1 to D2 by clicking the different dimension or even the logos on the spider diagram. Also this option. When we have scored the 12 dimensions and we have entered all of the maturity requirements, we will click on the Save Assessment, and they will tell us that we need to enter a description for this assessment. Clicking in this option, it will appear here the name of the assessment we have given, and we will need to select the healthcare system that we previously addressed when registering. It will be here. In our case, in my case, it will be Basque Country, and also open the list and select the practice we are assessing. If you or me, if we are the first person that will perform the first assessment of the group, will need to select other and go to step 9 that will be now addressed. If not, just select your practice and save. So if you are the first person introducing results, in the first person making the assessment, you will need to enter some information on your practice. This was developed to link the practices to the EAP on a hard repository and so on. For now, as we don't need it, what we are going to do is provide a name for our practice. It has to be the same for each of OTPs. For example, for the Basque one, JADECARE Basque OTP. For the Catalan one, JADECARE Catalan OTP. The same with the German and RSD. This has to be agreed by the assessment team, and again, please enter the same one, not to have problems, the same name. And then we will enter here the official name of the OTP in JADECARE, followed by JADECARE joint action. As you see, this is an example built with the Basque country's OTP, Basque Health Strategy in Aging and Chronicity, Integrated Care, Basque Country, Original Group Practice, and then JADECARE joint action. This way, the Scirocco consortium will know that this exercise is for JADECARE. We are in touch with them as we are part of the consortium, and they will take it of us. So I recommend you to do this. And then again, don't forget to save and update, or you will lose all this information. Once you have performed your individual assessment, you can go to the main page of the Good Practice Assessment and please push the share button. This is the test A I have made, and pushing share, it will give us to this screen. Here, what we have to do is enter the email of the assessment coordinator and push share to enable him to then compile the results in a joint questionnaire to enter consensus. So imagine that now is the case of the coordinator, that in the case of the Basque Country will be me. I have assessment from 2 different people, and I want them to compile and to compare and enter consensus. So first of all, I have to select the individual questionnaires that I want to compare and enter consensus. Click the button, and it will allow us to enter the information. So again, enter a name for the consensus assessment and the description. Enter the consensus scores for the 12 dimensions previously agreed with all of the team parts, professionals, and insert the consensus maturity requirements for each of the dimensions. It starts with 3, you can add more features, delete them, you can play with it. And again, important, save the composite questionnaire. It's very important to follow those steps to not lose information. This is being fixed in the new Scirocco tool, but for now, in this one, please follow those steps. And we will provide the coordinators with detailed instructions and dedicated meetings in the next week, so do not worry, you will be assisted during the whole process. Once the coordinator has entered the assessment and the maturity requirements, you will have to share those results with Clarigune. In this case, imagine that here there is the same name, but forget it. Consensus Good Practice Assessment, click it and push share. And share it with me. Enter my email and push the share button. And that's it. In our opinion, if you follow those steps, it will be success and you will not have problems. But again, I will be here to answer your questions, resolve doubts, and even be with you when you enter results on a teleconference or whatever. Okay, so let's move to the last item before the general questions, which is the timeline and the next steps. As you know, we have a tight schedule. So our proposal is to select first the assessment coordinator and the team by the 18th of November and share it with us, with work package 4 and 3, of course. Then we will conduct a teleconference between Konigune and the assessment coordinators to get used to the consensus process and to solve doubts and so on between the 23rd to 25th of November. We will send you a doodle when we have your names. Then we need you to complete the whole process in 2 weeks. So the individual assessments shared with the coordinator for the 4th of December and the consensus scores and material requirements filled in and shared with Konigune for the 10th of December. Because we want to give you time to think on identifying and sharing the material requirements for OGP's core features. And this has to be done, or our proposal is to be done by the 18th of December. Then the next updates will have 2 weeks to study this information and to perform the feasibility analysis to finalize the scope definition of their practices by the 31st of December. And this is all from my side. Those are some pictures taken in our consensus exercises in Scirocco, in the previous Scirocco project. I would like now to open the floor for questions, and then we will move to the tool, to make a test and to show how it is used. Okay, so if you have any questions, please go on. I will read also the chat. Sorry, Martina, I read it a bit later, so now I can use a pointer. I'm not sure if I could. I don't think so, but I will study for the next one. And yes, Sana, this maturity assessment is one for each of the OGPs. And then they will provide you with the template, the Excel template I showed before, with the information linking those maturity requirements with the core features. Any other question?
Sorry, John, this is Anna.
Hello, Anna. Tell me.
Hi. Okay, I mean, this is the maturity assessment of the original group practices, right?
That's it.
So is the ones that have to carry out this maturity assessment are the original good practices, or the adopters have to perform this as well?
No. What we'll need to do the next adopters is to take this table, fill it in by the OGPs. Imagine that in this case, you are interested in the Basque Country original good practice. We will write here for each of the dimensions the maturity requirements we identified in this exercise,
okay,
and link them with each of the core features. And for you, what you have to do is use this for the feasibility assessment. This is. Let me go there.
So this is mainly for the original good practices.
This is for the original good practices. We have invited you to be aware of the process and to know which type of information we provide you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, John.
You're welcome. Any other question?
Excuse me, I have not well understood. So, next adopter will not use this tool?
That's it. This is for the original good practices, for the early adopters. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. I have heard.
Any other question?
John, this is Vanessa from Portugal.
Hello,
Could
Vanessa.
you, hi, could you please show the templates of the Excel file?
Yep.
So we as a next adopter, what are we going to do with this?
You are going to take this Excel filled in and perform the feasibility analysis that we explained in the desktop search methodology, in the scope definition methodology that Anne shared with you in the kickoff meeting, in the workshop.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
If you have any further doubts, we can conduct and we will, of course, with all the next adopters, we can conduct teleconference on how to use them and how we plan to make the analysis and so on. So don't worry about that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. None of the early adopters has any doubts? Clear for everyone? I'm very happy, a bit surprised, I have to say, but very happy. Okay, so let's move into the tool, and I will try to give you a short example. So, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So once you have login, in my case, I can't show you because I did it in 2016, so sorry for that. You can access to the, as I said before, to the home page with information on the tool. Then you can check the health assistant assessments if you want to. And the one that is interesting for us is the good practice assessment. We click in new assessment. As I said before, it is mandatory to enter a name and all the steps I've made. And to go from the assessment information to the description, you just only have to click on this tab. But it's critical to fill in this information. Otherwise, if I click save, it will not allow me. You have to reply to all the questions, the scores, the requirements, and also the description and name. I have to say, that once you have performed the assessment and before sharing it, you can edit it. I mean, imagine that you have filled the 12 I mentioned, the requirement and so on, and the day after, you think that maybe in one of them you should have written a different thing before sharing it. So if you click the edit button, you can edit it. And important again, click the update button. Okay, it will appear that your questionnaire was successfully updated. Go again to this sheet. We can download the assessment and see in this case, my individual test responses and scores, and save it into your computer. You can hide it and send it to a recycle bin, or as I said before, share it with the coordinator of the assessment. In this case, I will not do as it's me. And practically to show, imagine that now you are the coordinator of the assessment and you want to combine results and enter consensus scores and requirements. You have to click in the assessment that you will want to combine or compare. Go down, sorry for this, I have a lot of them, and click compare and enter consensus, as I said before. Give a name, score, you can delete a feature, remove it, sorry, not now because all of them are empty, but you can add more, even more, and save it. As I haven't filled in anything, it will tell me that please reply to all the questions, all the scores, requirements, and also the description. You can also go to your account and revise your information, not all of it, so it's critical to enter the correct information. This also will be fixed in the new tool, but in this one you can't, so please take care of that. And if you will perform more than one assessment with the computer, of course, log out and so on. And also this is all from my side. Do you have any questions, or do you want me to test something or whatever? So please go on. The floor is yours again. No? Okay, perfect. Great. So I will stop recording and I will let Jelka and Kai as Work Package 4 and Christina also as Work Package 4 and 3 representatives, mainly on task 4.1. That is when we are going to perform this assessment, to tell you some words. So Jelka, if you want to